everyone. Welcome to Pensive Politics, Mr. Watson. I am most certainly your host, forever and eternally, Christian Watson. It is so good to be with you here today, my friends. Back for Monday, a Monday episode, finally. Yes, I'm consistent now, as I was not in the past. And things are going great. Things are going great where I am. The coronavirus fears are kind of fading away. I'm feeling very hopeful, and I'm hoping that things are going good where you guys are, and whatever station you're at in life, whatever is going on in your life. I hope that everything's going good for you. So, on today's show, we're going to focus on two main things. I will not discuss Ruth Bater Ginsburg. I just will not. Here's why I'm not going to do that. I have seen so much tribalistic hand-wringing and just shrill nonsense coming from both sides about RBG, being both fatalistic and catastrophic in their predictions. And I am just not going to fuel that fire. I will be talking about RBG in a YouTube video that I plan to post at latest by tomorrow, Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020. At latest. You can see my analysis there. But RBG, her legacy, the fight that has now ensued after her demise, and the implications thereof, they're too multivariate for me to explore in 49 minutes. Well, actually, in 23 minutes. Because our segments are now 23 minutes, 24 minutes. So I won't be doing that. You can go listen to someone else or watch someone else if you want to go hear a partisan answer about RBG. I can't give it to you. I'm not going to participate in that dumpster fire. But what we will talk about, the debates which are coming up next Tuesday, September 29th, the presidential debates, they are on. Joe Biden versus President Trump. President Trump was on Fox and Friends this morning, and he is being quite resolute that Biden is going to do well, but of course, he's saying that sarcastically, but he's confident that, in his words, and I quote, that he has done more in 47 months than Biden has done in 47 years. And you can expect to hear that quote thrown directly at Biden in the process of the debates. And how he responds to that, we don't know. We'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about this move to impeach President Trump, or the threat of impeachment that looms over President Trump in the wake of RBG's death. We won't discuss RBG, but we'll discuss some of the consequences. And this is a push coming from people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Nancy Pelosi hinted at this in an interview with George Stephanopoulos not too long ago. And it's causing a lot of, let me say, the fundraising for both sides is now ticking up. Especially if the Republicans think that President Trump's going to get impeached, you better believe that they are not just going to sit down and take that lying down. They're going to actually fight against it. They're going to fight against it by trying to reelect him. So, we'll discuss all that and more on this edition of Pensive Politics with Mr. Watson. All right, guys. So, the debates. Presidential debates are not really debates, by the way. It's a misnomer to assign that term to debates because it confers upon these presidential debates a semblance of legitimacy that would belong to an actual academic debate. And when you do that, you confuse people about the meaning of terms. And when you confuse folks about the meaning of terms, the truth becomes distorted. And the goal of understanding, the goal of learning, the goal of education, the goal of discussions, which a debate is a discussion, it's a sort of formatted discussion that is adversarial, should be to pursue the truth. But the media and the way we talk about presidential debates as debates obscures the truth. It's quite literally the most lowest form of what a debate could even be thought to be, much less what it is. And back in Athens, Greece, Plato had this idea that the most perfect iteration of a concept existed in this far-off place he called the realm of the forms. And the comments will call it forms. So, for example, the most perfect idea of justice that you could imagine exists up there. The most perfect idea of someone's physique that you could imagine exists up there. The most perfect idea of a governing system, like the most perfect, flawless, exists up there. The most perfect idea of beauty exists up there. We understand perfection is impossible in reality. But that doesn't stop us from honing ourselves, refining ourselves, and changing ourselves to try to reach a higher standard, which is all what Plato was trying to say, I think. Back to this. Presidential debates don't even get close to the definition of a debate, much less a more perfect or a more pristine definition of a debate, idea of a debate. It's essentially two politicians, most of whom who are untrained in actual formal debate, throwing talking points at each other and expecting to score the successive chorus of the media, or of their followers, or of undecided voters. It's basically two very long speeches, which are a pitch. It's all these presidential debates are. So I'm hesitant to say that these are debates. They're not debates, they're speeches. So, the presidential speech competition begins on September 29th, next week. And President Trump, again, was on Fox's Friends, and he is just sounding the alarm. He's like, well, Biden could do very good. And the Trump campaign is saying that they expect Biden to be tuned in, so to speak. And so there's already this overwhelming assumption that Biden is going to be on his A game. And this is strategic for the Trump campaign to say this. It's very smart. Because if he underperforms, which is very likely if you listen to him in the past few days, then they can say, oh, look at Biden. He has way more experience than President Trump, way more time in office than President Trump. He has way more tuned into these issues than President Trump, yet he failed. He's just like Hillary Clinton, who was way more experienced, but she didn't do too hot either, some of the debates. That's the line of attack that stems from this sort of steelman of Joe Biden's position right now, his station as a politician. And a steelman is simply when you make someone's argument or someone's position stronger than they made it, so you can then knock it down. That's what the Trump administration is doing, and the Trump campaign is doing right now. They are building Biden up so that if he caters, which is very possible, they can say, we won. If they lowballed Biden and just derided him and derided his mental acuity, as they are wont to do, going into this debate, and he knocks it out of the park, that would be embarrassing. So there is a sort of rhetorical strategy that they're employing here to ensure that Joe Biden, if he does lose, he loses in a grandiose way. That could possibly be a TKO, a knockout punch to his ambitions. That's smart. It's dishonest, but it's smart, my friends. It's never okay to lie. It's never okay to not convey the truest sense of your opinions. That is always abominable. I don't care what the circumstance is. It is never okay to lie. Well, what if lying saves someone's life? There are ways you can convey the truth that would not be detrimental to someone in a particular scenario. It's never okay to lie. And the admission of truth is not particularly the admission of an entire range of information. If I say I saw someone running down the street, if a burglar comes up to me, he has a gun out, and he's like, there is someone running away from me, have you seen this person? And I say, yes. And you say, and then he asks, well, what direction did they go in? And I say, well, I think that they went that way, but I'm not sure. You're not particularly lying. You're conveying a sort of refined, closed sense of the truth. That, you've already admitted you know where they are. But you're not obligated to tell him where they are. That's the thing. If you know your actions could lead to someone's demise, you are ethically obligated not to tell the person or the subject or of their demise where the person is. Similarly, in presidential politics, if you think your opponent's going to do bad, you should probably come out and say, he's going to do bad. Or else, you will cause a semi-crisis of confidence in your base by making them believe that you're adulating the other side. Or, well, first of all, the second part would be you're just lying. That would probably be seen as dishonest. To me, and to the general principle of telling the truth, is quite dishonest. So you shouldn't do that in the first place. So I wish the Trump campaign was a little bit more forthcoming with where they thought Biden would be during the debate. Because I don't think it's to their benefit to really lie. I get the stillmanning thing, but still, it's not to their benefit to lie. But the big question is Joe Biden going to have the mental strength to keep going? Because debate is a very involved mental activity. I myself am a debater. I was in academic debate. I had to leave because it was overran with ideologues who didn't want any cases or opinions that defied their left-wing, postmodernist, subjectivist worldview to be spoken out of the mouth of anyone participating in their space, as they would call it. Academic debate was terrible, guys. They would quite literally, it's terrible. They would quite literally have one team and another team, both of whom went past the resolution, the topic, and talked about things that related to nothing empirical, nothing objective, but to everything subjective and experiential. For example, let's say the resolution is, the United States should withdraw its troops from the Middle East. One team would say, who was on the affirmative, they could say, well, we are black women, and while you guys are talking about far-off places and imperialism, we're talking about the terror and the war that's going on against us black women. And then the other team could be like, well, we're disabled, and there is a different kind of war going on against disabled people. Therefore, the affirmative is not really... And that's what it becomes. It becomes a competition of identities that has nothing to do with the actual ideas that are meant to be discussed. That is what all academic debate has devolved... Well, all collegiate academic debate has devolved into. That's what it has evolved into. But me being in that circumstance, I was there talking about libertarianism, limited government, the importance of a tradition of liberty, the importance of objective ethics, objective truth, the sort of spring of life that flows from the tongue and onto the pages and illuminates people to understand who they are as human beings. That's what I was talking about. And they were all saying, "Oh, you're into this meta narrative, and you're trying to impose your will upon all of us, and you're an authoritarian, and you hate this minority group." It was nonsense. It was nonsense. And at least presidential debates have not stooped to that level. At least they still have some semblance of sanity, even if that semblance of sanity is very slim and does not constitute the whole of the catastrophe. But I used to be a debater, and I have debated outside of academic settings as well. I've gone to conferences and debated there. And good debate, is a very mentally involved task. I'm not sure Joe Biden's up for it. Now, I could say, years ago, in 2012, yes, I remember that. I'm 20 right now, but I remember 2012. That was actually the first year I became politically conscious. In 2012, Joe Biden debated Paul Ryan, and it wasn't pretty. And I was someone who, at the time, I liked Paul Ryan. I didn't mind him at all. He was a good deficit hawk. He understood the importance of fiscal responsibility. I didn't mind him at all at the time. But Paul Ryan just got gobsmacked. Not because Joe Biden was a good debater, but because Joe Biden just threw a lot of stuff at him and that Paul Ryan did not expect and couldn't really respond to in a very concise way. Which was surprising because Paul Ryan was a bulldog on the House floor. He would always debate and he would do fairly well. fairly well, not as well as a politician could do anyway. He'd do fairly well. But Joe Biden just overtook him and embarrassed him. If that would happen all those years ago, now of course, all those years ago, Joe Biden's faculties are much more stronger and intact. But if that happens here, oh my, oh, it's gonna be a catastrophe. Because here's the thing: President Trump is not particularly the best debater around, and he would tell you that. He's said in the past, my entire life has been a debate. I don't really debate that much. So he already has said, yeah, debating is not really my forte. Joe Biden has not made such an admission, but we can see by his actions that he would probably have a hard time. He would probably have a very difficult time stating forth a premise, getting to another premise, then concluding it, and having that argument be consistent and not incoherent. And it's a shame. It's really a shame. Truly. I find that these spectacles are basically meant to satiate people's desires for conflict. Because I think there is a desire for conflict in the hearts of some folks. I do believe that is not a universal truth, but it's in the hearts of some folks, there's a desire for conflict. And our political scene has been whittled down to how palpable and how ferocious we can be towards one another. Well, Christian is an adversarial system. Okay, and? To be adversarial simply means to be on two poles, on the side of two poles. To be right here and to be right here. To be adversarial simply means that I'm going to test your presuppositions against mine and see which one survives scrutiny. That's what adversarial stuff is. That's what it means to be adversarial, to be adverse, to be opposed. It does not mean to be vicious. It does not mean to be nasty. It does not mean to be cruel. It does not mean to be mean. It does not mean to devolve into a cacophony of intellectual insults and bile. It does not mean any of that kind of stuff. It does not mean to scream fake news at the top of your lungs. It does not mean to call everyone you don't like liberals, everyone you don't like far right. It does not mean to be a ideologue, good-for-nothing partisan who cannot think beyond the talking points of the day. That is not what adversarial means. Adversarial simply means I am going to test what you say against something else, and we will see what happens. We will see what will come of it. It is the process of determining what is the truth. It is the process of seeing the best iteration of a position. That's all that means. So don't come to me with that absolute nonsense. That being adversarial means you have to be aggressive. You have to be cutthroat. That is not what that means. But being cutthroat, being aggressive is what pays these days. So what happens? What happens? What pays these days is what goes on. The media loves the adversarial stuff, but not in its truest sense. When they bring Michael Eric Dyson and Candace Owens on the same program, do you think they want them to have an intellectual conversation or do they want them to scream at each other? And what happens? They scream. It's a shame. It's a shame. It's a shame. So my point is, this debate need not devolve into insults. This debate need not involve Joe Biden calling President Trump far right, or President Trump calling Joe Biden Sleepy Joe, or any of his other monikers, neologistic monikers that he imposes upon people he doesn't like. And that's not what this is supposed to be about. This is simply supposed to be a discussion that helps us understand what is best for the progression of the individual in American society. That is all a presidential debate is supposed to get to the root of. That is it. That is it. It's not about who has grown government more over the past 47 years. It's not about who can give more hand-me-downs. It's not about who can save the nation. If I hear that phrase one more time, I can save America. Joe Biden is America's only hope. If I hear that dreadful, stupid phrase one time, I will lose my good sense, as Descartes would say, and I will just roil. I will just barrel around like an unguided missile and hit everything. It's just crazy. A president should never even have been in the position in the first place to quote-unquote save America. You know what America is? America is a 320 plus million strong nation composed of the sum of micro-interactions, partitioned by invisible geographic lines we call states, and governed primarily locally. America is simply the sum of individual energy which came together in this sort of nexus to create something. That's all America is. America is me right now sitting in my room in Georgia, talking to you through the internet. America is when I go out and I go meet with the postman. I go meet with my friends. I go meet my professors. That's America. America is when I decide to exercise my natural rights in a manner propitious to my advancement and propitious to the advancement and the ability of other people to protect those same rights. America is what happens when the rubber meets the road and we are all together talking, collaborating, laughing, loving, being human. That is America. America is not this massive organism that a president has power over. The president has power over the government of the United States of America. But the government is meant to be incredibly infinitesimal and largely irrelevant to the lives of everyday Americans. But unfortunately, especially during this pandemic, that's not been the case. Especially during this pandemic, what's been the case is you have churches being shut down in California. You have still massive lockdown lunacy. What has been the case has not been a deference to the individual or a reliance on what the individual wants or needs for their life and their personal journey in this world. You have been seeing a sort of reverse of what America is meant to be on play in a grand exhibition of terror for all of us to see. That's not America. America is you, America is me, and no president can save you or me. Only we can save us. Remember that. Whenever you hear one of these charlatans say, I can save America, America is greater than that, my friends. America, our founders never conceptualized America being anything more than us interacting and being left alone to do as we want in life, provided that everyone else remains okay. But we've gotten to a point, unfortunately, where that is what these elections are about, saving America or whatever the heck. And it's a shame. Alright, guys. We're coming up at the end of the segment. Again, Pensive Politics, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Google, Pensive Politics, subscribe, do whatever you can. My social media handles, @OfficialCWatts on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. My YouTube, Christian Watson. Thank you so much for listening. Segment 1's almost over. We'll be back next segment talking about the other stuff. And again, thank you guys for listening. I'll be back in one moment. Thank you so much. Alright, welcome back. Segment 2 of the Pensive Politics program on this wonderful Monday, September 21st, 2020. Hope you guys are having a good start to your week. I remain in high spirits. I remain happy. I remain hopeful. I remain thanking for it. And all of you should too as well. All of you should. Happiness is sort of, it's water for the soul, so to speak. Because your soul has to grow. If your soul's not growing, then you're not growing. Even if you're not a religious person, there's just certain principles that you have to understand. But for me, I am a Christian, and for me to grow, my soul must grow. And my connection with who I could be, who I'm trying to be, is coming into sync with who I shall be. So, let this Monday not be a time of, oh my goodness, I have to go to work. a time of dread and baleful expectation. No, let Monday be a blank canvas for you to imprint the greatness that your week will have into reality. Let your Monday be a time where you say, yes, it's Monday and I have an entire 7 to 6 days to continue the standard that I set right now and propagate it to my benefit. So that's my inspirational message for you today. if I can give any to you. President Trump is once again within the crosshairs of the Democratic Party and their friends. My friend, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has said that President Trump should be impeached to prevent him from nominating a Supreme Court justice nominee in RBG's place. Nancy Pelosi, in an interview with George Stephanopoulos, she said, well, we have a lot of arrows in our quiver. Look at her being artistic and medieval in her prose, in her language, in her oratory. We have a lot of arrows in our quiver. Oh, goodness sakes. And then midway through the interview, she stops and actually she didn't hear what George Stephanopoulos said. And she's like, good morning. It's politicians are some of the most inauthentic people. And I have said this about Pelosi before. Pelosi is the most inauthentic woman on Capitol Hill. And that is saying something, considering that most individuals on Capitol Hill are inauthentic. They are embodying an idea that does not reflect what they truly want to believe or do, but they're doing it in the name of political expediency. Not in the name of principles, not in the name of natural rights, not in the name of individuality, but in the name of expediency. That's a problem, because it gets away from what they're meant to be doing. A politician's goal should simply be to ensure the government is well-oiled and runs to protect rights. But politicians have unfortunately just expanded the definitions of everything and has made the task of protecting rights so daunting and just unobtainable that now we have an obtrusive government which tries to provide us healthcare, tries to provide us with all kind of manner of things, with welfare, social security, and so on and so forth. An obtrusive government that tries to dictate to when or when not you can go to church. An obtrusive government that does everything in its power to make sure that you are following what it thinks is good for you, not what is actually good for you. The problem of inauthenticity has created a monstrous behemoth which has been crushing the vision of America for decades. And it's about high time that we say enough of this. It's about high time that we actually say that we understand the tradition we inherit as Americans, and we understand that tradition is not just good because it's old, it's good because it has enmeshed within its halls, the ideas of liberty and individualism which brought forth one of the most creative forces, benevolent forces in the history of this planet. But every single time a party needs something to happen, or every single time a narrative is constructed, these people act as emissaries, as high priests of these narratives, and all they do is for the narrative and not the truth. Pelosi's one of them. She's the highest. She is an offender of the highest degree in this respect. Oh my Lord. It's ridiculous. This is the same lady who told us that we don't have to read a bill. We need to just pass a bill and let it go into effect so we can see what happens. The same lady who doesn't at all endorse any form of intellectualism and simply speaks in single sentences. So when she says we have a lot of arrows in our quiver, I highly doubt her assertions, my friends. I don't think so. First of all, the House is not the body that confirms the Supreme Court nominee. So the only possible arrow in her quiver, I guess, would be to try to impeach him. But Pelosi may not be an intellectual, but she's not dumb. She's not a doofus. She understands. She's politically savvy enough to know that if she tried to impeach Donald Trump, as he said earlier, it would cause a massive resurgence in energy in Trump's base. It's already pretty energized, but still, it would just cause a massive surge in energy, which would put the Democrats on a death spiral. So, she understands that is what would happen. Pelosi gets that, which is why she's not dumb enough to do something like this. But just the threat of it keeps her base appeased, keeps her party appeased, so she makes it. But AOC and the squad, they're serious. When AOC says we need to impeach Donald Trump so he cannot nominate the next Supreme Court justice, they're serious. They actually think that they can do that. Because the Constitution doesn't matter to these folks. What matters to these folks is ensuring that their vision is enshrined in reality at the expense of any other person's vision. They operate in a zero-sum vacuum, which does not lend itself to growth, but instead to simple regression, which is unfortunate. I know, it's unfortunate that we've gotten to that point. But this is the reality that a lot of socialistic type folks live in. It's unfortunate. The resistance, so to speak. See, this resistance against Donald Trump is not really a resistance. It's a conference of it's a conference of the appearance of productivity upon people who are being woefully unproductive in their pursuits. That's what it is. When you resist the President of the United States, regardless of what party he is or whatever, in your capacity as a congresswoman or as a senator, you are effectively saying, hey, Mr. President, I know you're the one who has to sign off on my legislation and anything I try to do, because I can simply only write bring it up and try to bring it up for a vote, but you actually sign it. But I'm going to fight you for the duration of my term, and I'm going to make sure that with every breath I take, I'm opposing you. And of course, if a president is doing something abysmal or unethical or unjust, like Barack Obama when he was executing American citizens by drone strikes without due process, Rand Paul stood up and he resisted against that. That's good. That's good. That's good. When Ted Cruz stood on the floor for 23 hours, I believe. I think. I don't know. It's around that time. It was a long time. And he said that Obamacare was a catastrophe. That was good resistance. Although I must say, that instance was not actually a filibuster. Harry Reid basically said, okay, you have this certain amount of time to speak, and so you can speak for this certain amount of time, but after this certain amount of time, you're done. Filibusters go on for hours and hours and hours. They go on to the person filibustering can't filibuster anymore. So it wasn't really a filibuster, but still, it was an act of resistance. But even then, they understood that Barack Obama was the president, and they had to get anything affected, they have to be somewhat amicable. These squad people? No. They want to draft up obscene, unethical proposals, like the Green New Deal, grandstand, and then shake their head when things don't go their way. It's a shame. But there's also the effect of impeaching Donald Trump would bring into question the validity of the Congress. Congress is already one of the most despised political bodies in America, in contemporary America. Every survey shows that there is immense dissent towards Congress and the job they do. And Donald Trump's approval numbers, I mean, they've been in flux, but right now they're fine. They're not in a desperate state right now. They're evenly split, actually. They're very close. So public perception of Donald Trump has largely remained stable over the course of his term, with the exception of some of the things that happened with the coronavirus. But even then, it's bounced back. Most folks have already made up their mind on Donald Trump. And Pelosi understands that Mitch McConnell would never bring impeachment up for a vote in the Senate. So impeachment would simply be an attempt to wage psychological warfare on the president, an attempt which could indeed backfire or just go nowhere at all. But also, you cannot impeach a president of the United States for the high crime misdemeanor of appointing a Supreme Court justice, which is a part of his enumerated duties in the Constitution. And Trump has been saying this. He said, you can't impeach me for something that I'm supposed to do. So I don't think impeachment is going to be the route they go. But if they do, it's going to do a lot of things that are destabilizing to the institution of the Congress, that are destabilizing to, I think, the careers of a lot of these people, that are simply unethical. Very unethical, really. Impeachment is meant as a corrective measure against behavior which violates the undergirdings of the Constitution. If a president violates the natural law, that's when you impeach him. Donald Trump has not done that. You can say whatever you want to say about him. Donald Trump has not violated the natural law. Donald Trump has not done anything to warrant impeachment. There are plenty of areas in which I disagree with Mr. Trump. Plenty. Oh my goodness. Woo, many. Many. But those are on policy. This is not a policy discussion that's happening right now. This is a salvo being fired at him because there is a certain desire to thwart him wherever they can. And it's not Trump derangementism. I don't believe in that nonsense. It's not that. I don't believe in crafting Fox, mental illnesses to describe legitimate sentiments against the president. I don't believe in that. But it is most certainly an attempt to thwart the president. But one of the major reasons why they want to thwart him has nothing to do with actually high crimes and misdemeanors or laws. It has to do with the fact that they believe that Amy Coney Barrett, who could be the person that Trump nominates, because he will nominate someone, will they get to a vote? We don't know. But Amy Coney Barrett, she could bring about the demise of Roe v. Wade and the demise of the Affordable Care Act. Well, first of all, not sure if they got the memo or not, but the Affordable Care Act's main provision, the individual mandate, has been gone for a very long time. Like it's been gone. President Trump said no more. He said no more, and that was revoked in Trump's act. It was revoked. It was revoked, and thankfully, Americans can now choose what services they want to have, as opposed to being forced to a contractual agreement, an involuntary contractual agreement at that. By having to pay a crippling fine if they didn't acquiesce. Seriously. So the individual mandate's gone. Thank goodness. Hallelujah. That should cause all of us to have jubilation. The demise of the individual mandate. But that's the main thing that Obamacare was betting on to get people into their customer base. The individual mandate. With that gone, Obamacare is essentially ineffective. Practically ineffective. So I'm not entirely sure what exactly these people are thinking. It makes no sense to me. What in the world are they thinking? And ask for Roe v. Wade, my friends. Look. Ask for Roe v. Wade. It is my earnest belief that abortion is a grievous offense against life. That's my earnest belief. Primarily because of the innocence that the life possesses within the woman. I do believe in some exceptions, but largely it is just an absolute grave offense against life, against ethics, against dignity. It's abominable. And in no way should the government sanction such activity. In no way should they sanction it. Absolutely not. And in no way does the court have any legitimacy to sanction and legalize such an activity. But I am not someone who thinks the federal government should be involved actively in this. We should not be funding Planned Parenthood. We should not be subsidizing abortions. There's no reason for us to be doing that. And so, if the demise of Roe v. Wade comes about, I don't mind. First of all, the Supreme Court cannot make law, and there is no right in the Constitution to have an abortion. Simple as that. The Supreme Court is meant to rule on matters of the Constitution. Not matters they want to be inducted in the Constitution, matters of the Constitution. So, it would seem logical to me that someone who is an originalist would want to get rid of Roe v. Wade. I don't mind that. I suppose I would mind a sort of regime that would emerge from that would try to instill certain moralistic values upon people with the bludgeon of government. That's what I would mind. But that's not what Barrett or whoever Trump nominates would necessarily do. But the fact, and this is what I'm going to talk about in the video about RBG, the fact that we are up in arms about who is going to be on the Supreme Court should demonstrate to us that something has gone terribly wrong in the translation. Something has gone terribly, 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 terribly wrong, my friends. The Supreme Court is simply meant to interpret the law as it is meant to be, as it is. That's what the Supreme Court is meant to do. Nothing more, nothing less. But the fact the law has become so elastic, so as to include so many more things, so as to do so much more than it was meant to do, poses a serious moral problem, a serious legal problem from an originalist standpoint that we have to ponder. Why does a Supreme Court justice mean life or death for certain positions or certain activities? That should not be so. The Supreme Courts are not oligarchs, they are justices, they are judges. And judges simply have the law to go off of. Nothing more. Or at least that's how it should be. And neither side helps this dilemma by putting such an emphasis on the Supreme Court. They don't. They don't. Because both sides are complicit in the overgrowth of the government, but especially the left, with this sort of judicial activism nonsense. They're complicit. So what happens? What should we do? Very simple. We have to get to a point where we can narrow down the contrived responsibilities of the government and ensure that over time the government goes back to what it is meant to be. Not this fantasy about stacking the courts. The hell? FDR tried that. See how well it went for him. The entire Congress shut him down. He couldn't get it passed in 1937. He tried that. He did his best because he didn't want his agenda to be undermined. But if your agenda is against the Constitution, then it should be undermined. If your agenda is against natural law, it should be undermined. So they're saying if Trump nominates them, we're going to stack the courts. Well, what's going to happen if you try to stack the courts? Number one, as many folks have said, the court's going to lose legitimacy because it'll be seen as a political organ. Number two, this is a real one. Number two, when the Republicans get back in power, if that ever were to happen, if the Democrats take the Senate, what's going to happen is they're going to revoke whatever legislation that you passed and then probably try to push for a constitutional amendment to ensure that court stacking can't happen. Of course, it'd be a very big stretch and everything. But I think that's what that would be the reaction to backlash. And it's just, why do you think matters like these are best litigated or best solved through a panel of people who study the law as it is meant to be? Legislators exist for a reason. Legislators exist to make law, hopefully within the confines of certain moral parameters. Judges exist to interpret law, hopefully within the confine of the Constitution. So why in the world are you going to go try to reverse the idea of what a judge is by stacking the court and thus delegitimizing the idea of a judge and making the entire institution not both invalid and unstable at the same time. It makes no sense, and it is emblematic of an undergirding illness in American society that thinks that the government has the answer to everything. They do not. It's nonsense. You and your station in life are the most powerful, the most compelling, and the most brilliant being there is. The Supreme Court can't give you what you need to live. The Supreme Court cannot give you what you need to be happy. This is part of the reason why, even though I am gay, I was upset at the fact that Obergefell happened in the way it did. Because Obergefell is simply a recognition of what should have always been the case, but it happened through rank judicial activism. Trust me, I'm happy that marriage is now wide and extensive and anyone can be. I'm very happy. Although I would prefer marriage as just a privatized thing, and we leave it to the institutions of the culture to decide that. I would prefer marriage was just privatized and everyone could go get married on their own terms, not government benefits. That's my preference. But anyway, I'm happy. But I don't like the way it transpired. Because the more these things transpire the way they do, the more case law becomes actual law, and the more justices tend to bend the country over and just take them on a ride wherever they want to take them. The more that chicanery happens, the more that wizardry happens, the more we deviate from the vision of what America's supposed to be, and the more the proper sense of jurisprudence becomes undermined by what we think it should be. It's a shame. And so, let this fight just tell you that we have to reevaluate the role the government has in our lives and society. It should never be a fight that certain things like this are happening. The Supreme Court should be a largely uneventful endeavor. And it would be if we simply stuck to the original intent of governments. If we did that Lockean provision, life, liberty, health, and possessions, as he said in the Second Treaty of Government. If we simply stuck to that, I promise you, the Supreme Court would be largely an uneventful endeavor, devoid of fanfare, devoid of much spectacle, simply a regular process. It would be as important as dog catcher would be. But no, we can't do that. We have to be as ridiculous as possible about this. A shame. But so, don't get caught up in this impeachment nonsense. Don't get caught up in this court. Focus on the actual political dynamics that are going on. Don't worry about the rhetoric. Because I don't think that, realistically, all this stuff can happen. That is just my 2 cents on it. Alright, guys. Thank you so much for listening to Pensive Politics with Mr. Watson. As always, I am your host, Christian Watson. It has been so great to have you. Again, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. Just type in Pensive Politics. I will be there. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Christian Watson. Go there, subscribe. It helps me a lot. My Twitter, my Facebook, my Instagram, @OfficialCWatson. Again, @OfficialCWatson. All of those 3. I'm on social media. I'm getting more active. I'm getting in the game. Please subscribe. It helps a lot. It does. It truly helps a lot. Because I'm trying to bring you a message that most folks will not bring you. I'm trying to reinvent our political dialogue to be a wellspring of productivity and brilliance, not the dread it is right now. All right, guys, I gotta go. I love you. Thank you so much, my listeners. You're awesome. As always, guys, stay pensive.